You'll always find accidental connections inside the internets. I've been saying this since I was a writer over at ScreenRant.com. I've been talking about it my entire 20-year podcast career. But today we're talking to a very special individual who not only is a writer that I adore, mostly because he gives me options when I read, which is a skill set all on its own, but he is also a father. He's an outdoorsman, and he also has a zeal in firearms. This is Two Guys Talking Guns, and today I welcome Tyler Freel. Tyler, how are you, friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I am so elated that you came on, and the most important part of our connection that I want everybody to understand is that connecting with somebody quickly after you contact them, there is nothing more satisfying. And so I want to personally thank you for not only reaching back out to me, but doing it so quickly. I think it was less than half a day. And again, in the world of especially podcasting, but the internet of things, it's so very strange to connect with somebody so quickly, even though you think that it's so instantly able to reach out to anybody anywhere. It doesn't always work like that. So again, thank you for that, Tyler.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's it works good on my end too, because in today's day and age, you constantly have stuff coming and going, and I try to, as well, I'm sure we'll get into later. Like I try to, thoughtfully look through everything and be responsive when I can. So
yeah.
It has the randomness of the internet has brought us here, I guess.
Yeah, and again, it makes the fondest of bedfellows. You're also obviously a writer, which is how I found you. And actually, I'm gonna give you the little generation story of finding you. When I initially launched the Two Guys Talking Guns initiative back when I became a firearm instructor, I was looking for content on the internet that surrounded firearms. And for those of you that are just accidentally finding this program because you're a Mike Wilkerson devotee and have been following me for years and or decades, that's awesome. For those of you that have found me via firearms and guns and all things ammunition, the context of finding content on the internet that is firearms/guns based is very strange. It is a very strange profile, and as much as you'd think it would be just like kind of a want ads, except now in digital form on Google or however you would find guns. The fact is that finding gun content nowadays is a very strange landscape indeed. I actually found the path to Tyler by was trying to get into my Facebook account, and I had gotten a new PC. In fact, this one here in front of me that we're recording this program on. And for whatever reason, Facebook was not playing nicey nice with the Brave browser that I install, and then the install and the access into my Facebook account. And so I'm like, son of a bitch, what am I going to do? And a friend of mine had suggested that I just try a different browser that was that was Windows based, that was friendly, would talk to the computer. There would be more hand holding, and sure as hell, that's exactly what worked. I opened up a Microsoft Edge browser, and not so strange, I could get right in to what was going on inside of everything inside my Facebook account directly without any side cues, and put in your super double secret probation passwords and whatever the hell else there is. Yeah. They have now. And just as an accident to that, I found my way into the news that Microsoft shovels inside of, what's this? The gun vein. What is this? And so I instantly perked up my eyes, and I have to be honest, I couldn't quite believe what I was seeing. Not because I think that Microsoft is some giant anti-gun thing, but when I think of Windows, the first thing I don't think of is guns, firearms, ammunition, nothing, zero. They seem that they're far differently leaning than most people that are interested inside of firearms. And so I'm like, what in the hell is this? And so for it's got to be the last 6-8 months, I have continually found content that as soon as I pop open that browser window, there it is. There's some thing about firearms. And then I started digging down because, again, as an internet author myself, with Screen Rant, with my own writings now for a couple of decades, I know that typically when you find writings, they're going to be suggested to you because of either the writer, the content, or usually a double mixture of those things, depending on suggestion point. And so I looked, and I thought it was accidental. Tyler, I have to be honest, when I first saw your name, I'm like, Tyler Freel. You mean like Tyler for real? Because I thought it might be just like a pseudonym, like a pen name.
Yeah.
And so I'm like,
I've never heard that. I've never heard that one before.
Oh, really? Yeah. You know, like I would be instead of, okay. Instead of Mike Wilkerson, I would be Mike Freel.
Yeah.
So I was elated when I started doing some internet digging through the Googleverse, and I found connections to you. I found your podcast. I've listened to 2 or 3 different episodes, and they remind me very much of a lot of the content that I like, not only inside the internet verse, but also inside of what remains of the libraried, downloadable media that appears in, say, Netflix and YouTube and everywhere else. And I love it. And so just on a lark, I reached out, and instantly you reached back out. And so it's time for me to help other people find Tyler Freel. Tell us about you, Tyler.
Well, I mean, it's kind of, I'll give you as best as I can. I grew up in this topic, like hunting and fishing and shooting, you know, kind of obsessed with all that. I was born and grew up in Southern Colorado, and then moved here to Alaska when I was 16, which is where my dad was born and grew up.
Wow.
And I've pretty much just been scrounging and doing whatever I can to hunt and fish and shoot more. And I was a competitive shooter for a few years, you know, various disciplines, basically. Yeah. Just anything I could get into. I worked construction, you know, kind of after high school through college, got an engineering degree, and randomly kind of ended up in my place as a writer by being a smart ass on the internet.
Oh boy, that sounds familiar too. That's great.
You know, so I've been on the writing side. I started freelance writing back in like 2010 for Outdoor Life, and managed to stick around and keep getting work until about 2017. I kind of went to like a full-time freelancer. And worked for other publications too a little bit, but mostly Outdoor Life, and then was hired 2020. We're going on 4 years now, so whatever that is, counting backwards. But I've been on a staff writer, you know, on staff for Outdoor Life for the past few years, and that's kind of the quick and dirty. But you know, I really enjoy shooting, hunting, and kind of my thing I like about my job is it. Some people kind of a job is a means to an end, whereas, or you know, like hunting, shooting, whatever, like we are front facing in, is we treat it like a means to an end, whereas like the job is all this stuff just facilitates the lifestyle I want to have. So, which is hunting and shooting and fishing and whatnot. So.
Sure. And give us a little breakdown of your family that you have in Alaska. Again, my surprise when we connected that you are actually in Alaska. By the way, everybody that's listening, Alaska has its own time zone.
Yep.
I was 54 years old when I found this out, and it was about 10 minutes ago. So that's color me educated. Continue.
Yeah, it's always a little interesting coordinating stuff. I end up going to work earlier than the rest of our staff because we're all remote. But yeah, I you know have a wonderful wife and 3 kids, and they're growing fast, and I'm kind of approaching that time in my life where stuff's really starting to get fast, and I'm wanting to hold on to it. But no, it's great. One
of the things I think you'll find, especially in your writing and again, that you've been doing it, you know, for anyone who doesn't know, doing anything like, especially writing for a series of 5+ years in any discipline, regardless of the topic, you know, it really is something extraordinary. It's not just something to shrug off and say, oh, I did that for 5 years. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
The context of sitting at a keyboard and or a pad of paper, or however it is you capture your ideas, and going from I've got no ideas to I've got not only a viable idea, but something I think I could possibly get paid for. It's a big deal. It is not trivial. And again, when I look at the prolificity of your writing, and for those that are curious, all that means is that how detailed it is. The one that got me most recently, what really made me want to reach out, was your recommendations for carry guns in 2025. We'll have a link to that inside the show notes for this episode, as well as inside the description inside the bottom here. By the way, while you're here, if you're watching via video, make sure that you're hitting the like button and the subscribe and all the doodads and whatnots down here. Please do that. And then also leave some commentary, not only for Tyler, but also for the other people that are going to engage inside this video. Because again, you guys know that if you comment and engage, that means that more people find it, etc., etc., etc. Tyler, inside that article, we're not going to blow the surprise and countdown of what you thought was the best one, but of the ones that were represented there, are there a couple of others other than the top one that you thought were not only worthy of note, but also could have been the top gun, literally?
Yeah, and kind of to drop back, like as a little bit of a background to that, is our publication went all digital in 2020, and
right.
It's been interesting and fun to kind of tackle the changes and figure out both what works, because you want what you write to be or at least I do, to be meaningful and educational, but also you need people to see it. So kind of tackling that world has been very interesting. And one thing digital has done for us is to allow us to kind of have these stories be living documents, because nothing's static. This story about, what I consider are at least a lot of the best concealed carry guns. That's kind of a changing thing as new, relevant guns pop up. I can fold those into that story and whatnot. So that's just something I nerd out about, and I'm really excited about.
I love that. But believe it or not, the nerding out part and you getting excited about it, that translates completely inside of your writing. And that also is a rarity. Being able to find somebody that can not only write, but typically write how they speak and or feel, very rare. And again, that's frankly why we're talking. There are many people that can sit at a keyboard and put words together and get a word count and submit shit to have people read and engage and try and engage with. There's a completely different thing where you can see and feel the zeal that people are putting into their work, and you really do. You provide that every time.
No, well, I appreciate that. But to answer your question, I would state that first of all, it depends person to person. Like there's a lot of individual characteristics that all these guns have that, for one person, this is going to, option A is going to be more ideal than option B. A lot of the SIG P365s, I know those are in there. Those are great. And it may be pretty far up there, or I think will be in there, is this new H&K CC9 that we haven't really had a chance to shoot very much, but that's going to be a good contender.
When was that gun issued, Tyler? Is that a recent issuance?
Yeah. They just launched it for SHOT Show. So we got to shoot it at SHOT Show, but haven't really. And that's what another thing is, when, I or our shooting editor, John Snow, write about guns in these contexts, we are not putting guns in there that we haven't shot.
Bless you, my son. Bless you. Yeah.
Because there is a lot of that, and it goes back into the kind of formulas for making things succeed and be visible on the internet. There's some ways that in outlets that will kind of hack the algorithm, so to speak, without really actually getting firsthand. And you see this with any product. If you Google any product you're wanting to investigate, a lot of times it's just a skimmed list, but kind of firsthand experience with all these guns is something that's very important to us. So just keep that in mind when you're reading through, and we tell you what we think it's good at and what it's not good at. Another one that is recent that for like revolver fans, because I'm more of a semi-auto guy. I recently reviewed and got a Smith & Wesson 351 PD, which is a 22 mag J frame. So a very compact revolver that's 7-shot and almost no recoil, and ammunition has come a ways in the rimfire spectrum to, you can get Federal and Spear Gold Dot and some of these other ammunition offerings that are designed to function more like a defensive bullet rather than your typical rimfire stuff. So I got pretty excited about that. It's like a handy little stinger that is a lot more fun to shoot than a 357 J frame.
Oh yeah.
So that,
Again, for those that are not familiar with not only J-frames but 357 J-frames, there's a lot of couture handling that goes into making sure that's at least a fun fire and not
yeah,
just kind of an accidental "holy shit, what just happened" fire.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
amazing. That's
Yeah,
good.
and
That's good.
so that little, that's one of the ones that comes to mind. That's kind
Yeah.
of down in the list, but I mean, any of them could be someone's ideal concealed carry gun. That's generally the idea. Some of the tests we do are specific ranking type tests, but we do a lot of stories that are just meant to give you like an honest evaluation and a good look at the pros and cons and feature sets of these different guns that we have used.
Yeah, one of the things that I appreciate not only about your articles but also the people that I really do endear myself to is that there's a waft of genuine that also trails behind really good detail and factoids and storytelling inside of the stuff that engages me. That's again why we're having you on. And again, we're going to have links to not only that current concealed carry listing for 2025, but a variety of other articles that are used inside of not only my Two Guys Talking Gun stuff over on Facebook, but also the stuff that we talk about inside of other programming here at Two Guys Talking Guns. Tyler, tell me more about your gun experience. It's clear to me that you've been shooting since you were a child, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So, shooting and like reloading. I started reloading ammunition when I was a teenager,
Hmm.
just for my hunting rifles. And
Was that an endeavor to just save money on the front end, or was it just something you
yeah,
wanted as a life skill set, or how did that evolve?
a little bit of everything. I grew up
Mhm.
reading all these shooting and outdoor magazines, and my dad had done a little bit of reloading, and so it was kind of a bonding thing. I got saved up and bought my first hunting rifle when I was 15, and got a little like Lee, the old Lee classic loading kits for it, and loaded a lot of ammunition for that. And after as I grew up, I started getting more into hand loading when I was shooting competitively, and the service rifle is what the discipline where it's kind of it's still around, but I shot several years of service rifle, which you're basically different military type rifles shooting, more. It's a traditional style of competition where you're shooting at different positions at 2 and 3 and 600 yards. Kind of an old style, following a lot of the old military shooting protocols. But
Mhm.
I learned a lot about shooting from that, and loaded to save money and make decent ammo during that time, and just got more into loading for my hunting rifles, and yeah, my shooting has just progressed from there. I got into competitive, a little, into. I'm trying to measure like how in depth I sound like I got, because I was pretty serious about service rifle shooting, and then just kind of recreational into the USPSA kind of practical handgun shooting, steel match type of stuff.
And the loading stuff, I want to ask a couple of questions about loading because
Yeah.
my dad tried several times, tried to get me interested into it, and I don't think it's because I didn't have the attention span. I didn't have I don't know that I had the focus when he was trying to give it to me, and I don't know what to do with my mind when I'm reloading.
Yeah.
I don't know if that I'm not I don't, and that's why I asked you what do you get from it other than obviously the
Yeah. Oh,
monetary
yeah.
benefit and the tradition that it latches back to your father. Beyond that, tell me more.
Well, I think, and it's probably different for everybody.
Mhm.
I find it kind of therapeutic. I don't
Yeah.
enjoy all parts of the process, but
Mhm.
I do enjoy it, and I find some satisfaction from shooting my own ammunition that I've made. And
Mm.
that used to be like, it was really cool to go hunting with ammunition I made. And the novelty of that's kind of worn off, but I and even the monetary, money wise, for a lot of people, you're not gonna save money. You just end up shooting more volume and spending more money
Yeah.
when you reload. But for me, basically it's therapeutic, and I like being able to experiment and tune with stuff, and that maybe satisfies an itch of mine to go a little farther. Sometimes that's a little self-destructive when I can't restrain myself from just diving into something way more than I need to. but that's probably, those are probably the biggest things I get out of it.
Interesting. And so reloading and obviously guns. What are you carrying? Are you a general carrier, concealed carrier in your area? Do you just open carry? Tell me more.
Yeah, I concealed carry pretty much all the time. I've kind of put off getting I need to get my permit for reciprocity, but we're in a permitless carry state. So I carry a Staccato CS every day, pretty much
Nice.
everywhere I go.
That's very nice. We the range that I work at, we have a rental version of that, and the action over a series of now probably 8 or so thousand rounds, the action on that gun is just absolute butter. It's amazing. It is an amazing piece of technology.
Yeah, and it's one thing, in this writing and interacting with readers, especially when before a lot of the gun stuff got throttled on social. We would have a lot of interaction with readers, and you write a story about this, especially an expensive gun like a Staccato. You don't really understand the differences until you start shooting a lot, high volume through all these different platforms. And I mean, I've got plenty of Glocks and standard pistols and carry guns, and those are fine too. They're very functional, but it is night and day difference when you get a very nicely tuned pistol like that. And I can't. I've been carrying that thing for going on 2 years, and I can't. It has not been dethroned yet.
It's an amazing shoot. There's no question. What kind of holster are you putting that in? Something custom? Something you bought off the shelf?
Right now, I'm using it in a hidden hybrid IWB holster. It's got leather backed Kydex, and it has a pretty significant, may not be the right word, but it's got a pretty secure snap retention. Some hybrid holsters are a little bit loose or whatever. I want a secure fit in my holster, but that I can still easily draw. And I like where that holster with the leather backing is pretty comfortable, against the skin under your pants or shirt or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it also keeps the top of the rear of the slide metal parts from kind of getting a bunch of your skin oils on them. Yeah. And but you can position it to hold the grip high enough above your waistband that you can easily get your fingers around it without having to fumble. So that's what I've been using lately. Although I kind of have to switch and try different stuff. That's kind of, if there is a thing to complain about, which it's a first world complaint, but as in my job, if anything, I'm overwhelmed by the options. And sometimes I would just like to pick, one hunting rifle and just use that or this. I do thoroughly enjoy getting to try everything, but sometimes it's a little overwhelming. And for something like a concealed carry, like you really need to spend a lot of time with a particular system to be to be functional and very comfortable with it. So periodically, every few months, I'll maybe swap out a component of that and try a different holster or different optic or whatnot. But
a fellow firearms instructor and I, his name is Arian, he and I will be compiling a series of what are essentially encyclopedias for insert name of gun, whether it be something new or something that's tried and true inside of people's cabinets. And what we're essentially going to be doing is not only just an introduction to the gun, but then how to effectively field strip and clean the gun, and then also how to deep clean the gun, but then also just running 1,000 rounds through a gun is something you just don't see. What you also don't see is you don't see a good solid after action report after 1,000 rounds. Yeah. And so our hope is that making these compendiums of information for a lot of different firearms that either people have or that are newly arriving inside of the gunverse, we're really hoping that is going to provide something not only new, but something very, very genuine.
Yeah.
Again, because as you've already stated, you can kind of get on the internet, in particular YouTube, and you can find the guy throwing a whole box of 50 rounds through a gun. Oh my God. Wow. Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Except that it's not that amazing. It's everybody can do that with any gun on planet Earth. But what happens after, say, 1,000 rounds? How do you actually effectively clean that gun? What are the little picadillos that you simply don't know because you don't have firearms knowledge about that gun? That's something that we're going to be developing inside of a series of new programming. And again, we'll have links to that down in the description here inside of the video verse, but then over at the show notes over at 2GuysTalkingGuns.com for more information there. I think the other thing that's also going to allow us to do is to reach out to people like you and people that have some really very significant outdoor experience. That simply just work guns differently than most. You being in the austere of something like Alaska is a completely different concept than someone here unpacking their gun inside of the St. Louis area in Missouri. Tell us about how some of that impacts you, especially when we're talking about, again, imagining Alaska. You're in the throes of like deep winter, are you not right now?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got another 3 months or so.
Wow. So, and tell me more. I mean, again, having just an assumption, you can't leave your guns in an ice cold truck for long periods of time and expect them to function correct?
Well, that kind of depends, but it does bring its own challenges because, like the different lubricants will perform differently, or if you leave a cold gun in a truck, it might perform fine, but then when you got to watch the cold to hot transitions.
Right.
If you bring an ice cold frozen gun that might function fine outside, you bring it inside and you get all kinds of condensation and have to strip it down and sorry, the printer was you've got to kind of deep clean it to prevent corrosion when that happens. Just carrying, I don't know, it doesn't change my maybe method too much, but you do always have to be aware of that. And shooting outside, like I do a lot of rifle testing, so you kind of have to use some different lubricants and take different measures when you're rifle testing in cold weather versus normal lower North American weather. But
it's very interesting. Again, Arian is a survival specialist. He was in an unknown designated, very secret, quiet group of army-like people, which is the only way I've been able to describe his group because I don't know anything about it. But he has some very significant survival skills, and I think getting him on with you inside of a future program is something we should definitely do to talk about things like that. He's just a fount of information. He's the guy where I can walk up to any gun that's inside of our, the range that we both work at and point at it. And I turn on the faucet and I can just sit there and let him perplex me with all of the intricacies that he can detail just one by one by one by one by one by one. It's amazing.
Yeah. No, I feel like I'm right at home with that, but it's always a process too. Cause I don't know, I always, other kind of people in my circle, we talk about always having kind of imposter syndrome where, it's like I still do feel like I'm kind of an imposter, but also knowing what I do know. And it's been a process, you don't learn the stuff. You're not certainly born with the information, and no one is, and you don't learn the stuff overnight or without kind of repeated and comparisons of different guns. Like for example, like the cold with ARs, keeping ARs running in really cold weather is a challenge, and there's not really a perfect solution because the more lubricant you add, the dirtier something gets in the cold, that carbon buildup and stuff, it gums stuff up. The more lubricant you got to add, and the more that stuff gums up, and especially you start getting sub-zero temperatures, stuff gets a little wonky.
Without question. Again, the environment that anybody is in, regardless of where and when you are, is always something that's impactful. Well, let's talk about something a little bit outside the box of guns. You'd mentioned not only hunting but also fishing. Tell me more about your ongoing experience there. I know you mentioned your kids. I'm assuming you're grabbing them and toting them along with you.
Yeah, I tell people when I was growing up, I was equally obsessed with hunting and fishing, and then hunting and shooting have kind of taken the focus of that. But I'm a recreational fisherman. I around here I like to fly fish for grayling. I don't do as much of it as I used to, but we like to take the kids ice fishing. There's some good local lakes, and then places we can ice fish for northern pike and stuff that get pretty big. And then most of my summer fishing ends up being in conjunction with hunting trips. You know, we're hunting on river systems and whatnot that we can usually catch pike, and that's kind of the extent of it. I've spent some time down on around Kodiak Island, working at a lodge in the summer, and would kind of, when I was doing that, I would get my fill of fishing for the year in about 3 days. But
yeah. To transition back to guns real quick, in particular, knowing where you're at, do you have any really cool bear hunting / encounter stories that involve firearms?
Yeah, let me see if I can. I've killed enough bears probably to fill a good sized dump truck, so I don't know. So yeah, the short answer is yes. I'd say I'll kind of ring them off. I mean, I've had a lot of. I had a bear. The one bear I have, because people, you know, on the internet, especially people kind of overblow bears. You know, there are, like, in the western United States and stuff, like in areas like grizzly bears, for example, are a real issue and, you know, need to be paid attention to. But I don't walk around just terrified of bears everywhere like some people feel you should. The only bear I had to shoot was a black bear, and it was in a situation where I put myself in the situation where I ended up not having a choice. But he had stolen we were hunting black bears in a really remote area, and where they don't really ever see people or know what people are. And he had taken the previous night, he had taken my chainsaw out of my boat. He climbed in my boat and picked up and ran off with my chainsaw. Unfortunately,
there's a cartoon I have to draw. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, no, and I thought it would make a funny shirt, like this bear carrying a steel chainsaw by the chain break, you know. And he was a good sized bear, but I was hunting with a buddy and wanted to get a really nice one, and this one's hide was kind of rubbed, and we didn't really want to kill that bear. And so, but the next day he tried to he got in the boat again, and I went and ran him off, and he just was not taking no for an answer, and came just slowly closer and closer and closer until I finally just he started acting pretty aggressively at 12 feet. So I shot him. But,
well, can I ask you what you shot him with? It's kind of the dialogue that we're going to. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that was with a 375 Ruger.
Okay.
I usually, a lot of the bear hunting I do, I kind of have, unless I'm hunting with another rifle, I've done a lot of bow hunting in the past too. So when I'm walking we do a lot of bear hunting on baits. Where we are, it's so thickly wooded that you can't, spot and stalking is just not realistic. Mm-hmm. But, you know, so I'll usually have a big rifle like that to go into baits and to track bears that have been shot. Just because you are very likely, it's a situation where you're asking to walk right into one, and, you know, stuff sometimes needs to be dealt with. But I generally don't hunt them with rifles that big, though.
Yeah, I think we need to definitely plan a little future you visit with either myself and someone else that we have on staff that can talk about bear encounters or the preparation for bear, especially for the folks that live here in the state of Missouri when they're coming into a gun range like ours.
Yeah.
And they want to talk about the bear encounter that they're going to have and what they should be prepared for. Yeah. There's a series of I love to debunk things that are not only on the internet, but inside of the general cultural milieu that everybody thinks is an instant piece of you must do or you'll fail. Yeah. I instantly love to not only gravitate toward those things, but help people understand that there are way more facts that need to be involved inside of your thought process versus you going and buying a big fat gun and strapping it to your chest.
Yep, that's
And
me.
and,
Me too.
and we're definitely going to have that discussion too, because it's one of my favorite conversations with people that come inside the range and either are looking to buy a gun and will ask for a recommendation. And what I typically do, there's another program that I do called the YouTube Scout, and the YouTube Scout, there's a wonderful video that I found. It's about essentially a bear encounter training camp that is out west. I think it was either Utah or Wyoming. And inside of that camp, it's I think it was a SEAL Team 1 member who has opened up this camp to help people understand the folly of you thinking that you are just simply going to gun down a charging bear. And he runs you through these entire segments of things to help understand just how very quickly, and you have no chance. They're not there, and then suddenly they're there, and they're biting your ass, and you're dead, and it's just kind of over. And I that's why I always tell people, we're happy to sell you whatever you want to buy with whatever ammunition we're going to recommend for you to fill it. That's fine. But, like, make some noise, like have something jingling on your belt and some bear spray so that if something happens, you've got at least a chance.
Yeah.
Versus you trying to pull something off of yourself to then get a bead and try and take a real shot at something that's charging at you between 30 and 40 miles an hour. It's just, it's not realistic. And again, that video of that guy in that camp is just, it's so illuminating, because you literally have that long, and then it's either working or it's not working and you're dead.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of the thing that most people don't understand, is there's no like clean cut answer to it.
Right.
Like I do still, when, if I'm doing something where I don't want to lug around a rifle, or likelihood is low, but still there, I'll carry a pistol, and usually I'm still on 10 millimeters for the most part.
Yeah.
But you can't think, people tend to think that they place more confidence in their pistol, whatever it may be, than really they should be.
Yeah.
And,
it's double folly for us, because in addition to being a gun store, we're also a gun range. So that it's true, we can sell you the gun, we can sell you the ammunition, we can even put you into the spot where it's about that far that you'll be originally shooting a bear as it's charging you. Yes, absolutely. It's not the same thing, my friend.
No,
it's not the same thing.
Nope. And and through the years, I've been charged a few times and had a lot of like really close encounters with bears and grizzly bears. Just animal behavior and and those are pretty much all mostly in situations where I knew what I was getting myself into. But just animal behavior and general good practices to avoid a confrontation are much better than the confrontation, because it might work out fine. I mean, if you have the chance, and a lot of people do end up getting the chance to, having the time to adequately defend themselves, but you might not either.
Right.
It's just as likely. And if you are going to use a firearm to defend yourself against a bear, hitting it is more important than what you're using, because unless it's a big rifle, like any handgun is just a handgun.
Yeah. And again, people understand the density of, especially the skull of a large bear. It's folly to try and explain that, because it's like, okay, so go knock on your engine block real quick. Yeah. That's kind of what we're talking about.
Well, and that's an interesting thing, because even a grizzly bear skull, like there's you can always make up situations where, like, you could come up with a kind of a shot direction or impact that wouldn't work out so well, but also, like a 9mm with hard cast or a good like monolithic, like, will go through a bear's skull. Like, it's not, so it's, and that goes into the, I typically will recommend people shoot a 10mm, but man, a 9mm, if a 9mm that you can shoot really well is better than something bigger that you can't, because you're just trying to stack the deck in your favor as much as you can.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you've alluded to a deck, because it really is, it's very much playing some blackjack. That's what I always tell people. The best encounter to get into with a bear is the one you don't get into. There's no question.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very cool. What else can we talk about? That I know that you've mentioned your podcast, that you would love more people to listen to it. I mean, like, wouldn't all of us?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what propels you to podcast. Tell me more.
Well, I was kind of late, like everybody, compared to yourself. I was late to the party, and shortly after I discovered what a podcast was, maybe like 2017 time frame. I started finding there were a few hunting podcasts out there, and I started listening to them, and then there were more, and it's kind of been, and still is, probably an explosion, because there's once you start digging, there's kind of a low barrier to entry, but which I think in some cases is great, and I think the podcast world kind of sorts itself out. But I would start hearing of people, stories from people coming to Alaska to hunt. But the more I researched, there wasn't really any at the time. There wasn't really any. There's only one other like Alaska hunting podcast that I could find, and it's a friend of mine now who lives down in Southeast Alaska. But there was really a gap that I was like, I've got a lot of stories, and I know a lot of people that no one would ever know that are doing really cool things and just have really good perspectives, and can entertain and provide some useful information to people who are interested in Alaska. And that's kind of the general idea, is talking about Alaska hunting and fishing and trapping and wrenching on equipment and stuff like that we end up doing up here. So I kicked it off, and have been, maybe the pacing isn't as nice as I would like it to be, but have been steadily chipping away at it, and still enjoying it. And the people that really enjoy it seem to really like it. So
the best part about podcasting, and there's another program I would encourage you to listen to that we put out. It's called the Podcast Gauntlet. And knowing your zeal for helping people to understand the debunk part of everything that is myths, that's essentially what we do inside of the Podcast Gauntlet. Is we're taking on all of those mythos that are inside of podcasting that have somehow become legend, that if you don't follow them, you're instantly going to fail. Like, you must publish every week on a Thursday at 7:30 p.m. or you will fail. Yeah. And the fact is that if you've got people that listen to your podcast, all you've got to do is put out another podcast, and they'll listen. Mm-hmm. There's nobody with a mouse that's hovering over the unsubscribe button to your program, waiting for Thursday at 7:31 p.m. Yeah. And then they're going, fine, I'm out of here. Yeah. There is no such thing. So remember, just continue to podcast and make it the best program you can for the time that you can give it. Yeah. It's never been more important to, again, I love that you already understand the concept of collecting legacy for yourself. Not only for yourself, but also for the people that know you and love you, because that's what podcasting is. Podcasting is captured perspective that conveys you. It is you. Mm-hmm. And the people that are either near you or in your sphere of influence or somewhere inside of your orbit that encounter you get to meet up with that presence that you provide. And so continue to do it as you see fit. Some of the best podcasts, they're actually taking 6-8 months between each program. And it's not because they have to take that long. It's because that's how long it took. Yeah. And that's what it took to make a good podcast. Remember, there is never such thing as a podcast that is too long. There is a podcast that is too boring. Yeah. And there's a difference. What I also encourage people to do, especially with podcasting, as we have found out inside this podcast, is that the podcast must contain light bulb moments. There must be something that you garner from this podcast that you would not have otherwise known when you first started listening to this program. And as long as you keep peppering it where there's at least 2 or 3 of those inside the episode, checkbox, my friend. And you will have another entry inside of your library that will help you and others find out more about you and your legacy left inside of podcasting. It's always worked that way. It's very difficult to hear that, because when everybody starts podcasting, you're like, oh, hell yeah, I'm in every Thursday, baby. Yeah. Every Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Yes. And it almost never works out that way. In fact, very often when that that expectation and that must-have thing finally starts to bite you in the ass, and you go, I can't do this. And they'll throw up their hands and they'll put the microphone down. I don't want you to do that.
No,
I want you to continue doing podcasting. I just want you to do it where it's comfortable for you, and it's not this harried son of a bitch time thing that eats all the time that you want to spend doing other things and you get no value out of it at all.
Yeah.
So stick with it, my friend. Again, the benefits are wondrous. And I think especially as your kids get older, as they'll not only see what daddy's made, they're going to want to get involved in that too. Because again, I got to tell you, friend, it's a living record. It's what I hold most dear about the 38 podcasts that my dad did with Fast Freddy's Castle of Common Sense. I can remember each of the lessons that he used as a centerpiece to blather on inside of those episodes when I was a child.
Yeah.
And so being able to listen to not only his voice, but to hear him spill those things onto other people, that I hope they get his light bulb moments far faster than I did. Because of course I knew everything when I was a kid. And it's so enlightening to understand how things not only come full circle, but they only come full circle when there is a record to look back on.
Yeah.
And so never stop podcasting, friend, regardless of how often you do or don't do it.
Yeah. No, that's really encouraging to hear, because it kind of aligns with what I've felt, that, I don't want to get caught in a hamster wheel.
Right.
Is ultimately, ultimately, there'll be podcasts that come and go, and you end up getting bored because it's literally just regurgitating the same, rehashing the same thing 50 times over. And I do repeat myself from time to time, but it's been more rewarding to just come at it with an attitude of, like, I would rather do a meaningful podcast every, once to 4 times a month rather than every single week.
Yes. And continue to do that. Again, there's never anything that is too long. There's only things that are too boring. You must engage your audience with something that they simply can't get elsewhere. And I got to tell you, the chemistry set that you're building with not only your content, but your expertise, not only inside the writing verse, but just you live in a completely alien environment.
Yeah.
That people are just like, I can contemplate the concepts of Alaska based on all of the television programming I've seen.
Yeah.
And that's it. I got nothing else. Right. And so being able to share, if it was only just that, is a giant piece of a menu there isn't another hunter that has never been there could possibly convey about your environment. So,
well, and it's a funny example of something like that. And it's pretty organic. A lot of the episodes are just, kind of shooting the shit, and we kind of have a direction maybe, or certain things we want to talk about, but very organic. And one of the things was, somehow it came up. My good buddy and hunting partner Frank was talking about how a generator he had quit working, wouldn't produce electricity, and he had gone down and talked to someone because he was going to scrap it. They said, "Oh no!" And had this trick for jump starting your generator, basically to regain the polarity, and all that's neither here nor there. But it was this kind of just out there ambiguous thing that I must have got 5 or 10 different people reach out asking again, what episode that was, or down the line of how to do that. So it was if there can be a few bits of useful information and it's entertaining, then I'm doing my job.
No, I love that. I think the last thing we're going to gravitate towards is writing. Again, for those of you that have never done anything more than maybe say creative writing in either a class when you were in high school, or maybe a project for maybe a strange college class that you found yourself in, or even something as strange as writing for a publication, like for your church, or perhaps for a local newspaper inside of your city or your municipality, whatever. Writing is a very specialized thing too, just like podcasting. And what I have found, especially as a writer, is that it's never been more important to make something that is you when you write. It is the ultimate expression of you being able to tell people not only what you feel, but what you think you feel. Because I've been able to find a few people, and I include you in the base as well, especially now after our conversation. The people that can write the way that they speak are very, very rare, and I love that. But what I also love is that you can also sense when you're experiencing a writing, or you yourself are writing something that is not only sharing who and what you are, but also has this essence that you can't quite quantify, because it's not only you telling the story via your voice. It's not only Tyler and I showing you our expressions and our facial expressions inside of a window inside of, say, YouTube, where you might be watching this right now. By the way, hit the like button. It's also about being able to take the kernel of an idea and show it to people the way you want them to see it. And you can do that inside of writing, unlike you can even in person to any extent. And so again, writing is such a very interesting place. How do you come up with the ideas for your writing? Are you looking through a previous master list? How does that work for you, Tyler?
Well, sometimes, and this is where, I love my job because it gives me a lot of freedom. I do get some topical stuff assigned, and usually can pick through stuff that's relevant to me. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is it like no one write. I hated English and writing stuff in school.
Oh yeah.
And it wasn't until, and I have a mechanical engineering degree, but I had to take a couple of like writing and communications courses. And it wasn't until in college, it wasn't until I was able to pick things that I was interested in to write about that it kind of clicked.
Yeah.
So I focus on topics that are interesting to me, from the, even, well, whether it's from kind of assigned topics or generating my own ideas. Usually I find all the work I could handle in just topics that I think are interesting in the shooting space, for example, because most of my writing is technical gun writing or hunting stories.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I just kind of lean on my own interests to do some research, in the digital age, like do research, like, well, what am I interested in that other people are also interested in, and research that way to kind of solidify different ideas. A lot of this, I love to do a lot of debunking stuff, because I'm trying to constantly learn and get better, have better understandings of this world, ultimately to help people like operate more efficiently and effectively, and less expensively when possible. So that's kind of the way I look at it and how I come up with my stuff. And it's been a process to learn that writing, and I'm flattered you think that you kind of your compliments on that, a lot of that stuff comes through. I can hardly even looking at stuff a few years ago, I have a hard time looking at my old stuff. I'll instantly, I would wish I would have done this or that, but it's a growth process for anyone, no matter what you're starting. And I've got to really credit like our shooting editor, once I got hired full-time, worked with me a lot on just basic writing stuff, principles like, do the words say what you mean, type of thing. When you're kind of revising your own work, do those words say what I want the reader to understand? Just principles like that. He and I even went through, it was a book by a professor on like Russian, kind of classical Russian short stories authors like Tolstoy, and it's called A Swim in the Pond in the Rain. Like totally irrelevant to guns, but if I can read through this and read better writers than myself and kind of capture some of the mechanisms and mythology, and methods to, incorporate this into my own writing, so I can, whether it's just conveying technical info or an idea that if I can incorporate some little things to help myself do that better. And it sounds a little snooty, but when I start looking at my previous writing and some other writing, it's like, stop trying to pretend like you're Louis L'Amour. You're not Louis L'Amour. Like, So, and most valuably, it lets me look at my work and I think make cleaner, more concise stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and the best part is that, and again, I got to tell you, I love looking back at my previous stuff, especially listening back to my previous stuff. And it's not because I like to listen to the sound of my own voice. That's not, well, that's a piece of it. But just especially as a professional voiceover actor, I love to go and listen to my previous reels on stuff because I can see how far I've come.
Yeah.
It really is, it's cathartic. And I love that I was able to have things like that because of the volume of stuff that I've made over the last 20 plus years as a content creator and podcaster that I think a lot of people don't have because they're not making content.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that they don't make content is because of many of the things that you've just listed inside of why you may not have taken the path that you did, but you chose to do those things. And so you took the path. Yeah. I love all of that, and again, it's the context of enduring the hunt of finding yourself inside of your creation stuffs that I really hold that as a special skill set as well, and that is why I am talking to Tyler Freel today from not only outdoors.com but also a variety of wonderful articles that are on the internet that I found again via the news front end inside of a Microsoft browser window. And Tyler, I cannot thank you enough for sitting in with me and Two Guys Talking Guns listeners today. You are another person that I consider a complete fount of information inside of not only an alien environment, but one I likely am not going ever to experience, not because I don't want to, but I don't know when I would ever have the time to come and visit inside of Alaska. And again, you are another of the Two Guys Talking Guns astronauts that I get to talk to remotely via the internet so that we, as the listenership and conveyors of Two Guys Talking Guns content, can reach out and touch and experience the things that you offer us inside of your environment. Thank you so much, Tyler Freel.
No, thank you for having me.
You betcha. And remember, all of you that are listening right now, make sure you go over to 2GuysTalkingGuns.com, interact with us inside of all of that content, but then also check out some of the other programming that we've got via Two Guys Talking. You can find the Two Guys Talking Data Core over at 2GuysTalking.com. There you'll find over 20 years, more than 100 different programs across a variety of different interests, people, and perspectives as you two share in the capture perspective of podcasting. Again, thanks for listening. I'm Mike Wilkerson, one of your hosts. That's Tyler Freel, the dude that I love to read on the internet. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.